Ladies and gentlemen, kicking off the first stop on his world tour, our new president and prophet, Russell M. Nelson! You say you want some revelation, well, here you go. It's gonna blow your freaking mind.
Hey, greetings, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the weekly Mormon News Roundup, where Dives and Al ruminate on the great and spacious beehive. This week, we've got episode 30 coming at you, and we have a special guest this week. Today is October 23rd, 2022. We have PD from Priesthood Dispatches. He's joining a podcast today where we're going to discuss with Deseret News has come out against polygamy and polyandry. And also, an anti-gay Mormon dad has gone viral. We're going to talk about what tweet he sent out. We have the Ukraine temple is reopened amidst the middle of a fighting, big war going on, and they opened the temple. We'll talk about that. BYU Provo enrollment may be in trouble, and Bad Mormon book author Heather Gay is sued by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So come and join us on the Mormon News Roundup. How you doing, D-Bays?
Hey, I'm doing fantastic. If you want to get in touch with us, we're at www.mormonnewsroundup.org, or you can send us an email to collab@mormonnewsroundup.org. And we'd like to welcome PD to the program. PD, welcome to the Mormon News Roundup.
Thanks, guys. Amazing to be here. Thank you for the invite. And your intro music was amazing.
We gotta thank Weird Alma for that. He's a gem. We're so glad to have him.
Yeah, tremendous. Let's get to know PD for a little bit. First time on the program. I've been a big fan for quite some time. Now we're going to ask you a couple questions to get to know you. And during that time, PD, we may be doing some pausing for 10 or 20 seconds at a time to try to get to the truth. And I understand that is a well-established method to actually getting inspiration and also getting to the truth of someone's questions. Is that right?
Yeah, that seems to be going around a little bit at the minute. I don't know who came up with it. It's probably some young bishop who's a real star in the Mormon church who, thought that was the best way to use the gift of discernment. So you go for it.
Okay, that's what we'll do. You know, he's probably had quite a plight. That's what I understand. Let me ask you, PD, what makes the followers of Joseph Smith Jr. So interesting to you?
The absolute will to ignore history. Just the we didn't even know the guy, but his charisma still lives on 200 years later, and it just blinds everyone to, even me at times, and what happened in the past and different things. But yeah, just his impact even now, and the way that people will just toe the line behind him.
Oh wow, that is a great answer. One of the things that brought to mind is the fact that there really are almost two versions of history regarding the man. There's what the believers and followers of him believe in is the history, and then there's what the historical record shows a history. And so to have a person like that, that was a really good answer. So I got a question for you. When did you start the Priesthood Dispatches? How long have you been doing this?
2 years almost. So it was started when I got out of my ex-Mormon angry phase. So I think everyone goes through that, don't they? And I got to the end of it. I chilled out a bit, and I was like, well, what am I left with after all of everything? And what I was left with were a few funny stories about, priesthood leadership and stupid things that happened. So I started writing them down in a blog, which I called Priesthood Dispatches, because it was supposed to be dispatches from the front lines of high demand religion, like kind of the army. You mentioned in dispatches for heroic acts. So yeah, a couple of years ago, that was why.
And let me ask you, what are you hoping to what is your goal with Priesthood Dispatches? What are you hoping to accomplish? Because obviously there's a lot of podcasts, there's a lot of YouTube channels. The space is somewhat saturated. So I mean, what makes you special? What do you hope to accomplish?
Yeah, it's saturated, but doesn't that just tell you how well the church is doing? There's so many of us that are like, no, we need to speak out now. So no, Priesthood Dispatches was never meant to be any kind of educational channel, any kind of weekly, bashing on the church or anything like that. It was purely a way, almost therapeutic, for people to just laugh at themselves. Here in the UK, we have to laugh at ourselves. If not, we would just cry. So we have that kind of self-deprecating attitude towards bad things that happened, and I see Mormonism as a bad thing that happened to me, so I want to laugh at it. And that's the point in Priesthood Dispatches. People come on and tell their craziest stories or funny things that happen to them, and we just try and have a laugh. Or if we do discuss important things or doctrine, we just try and remain jolly about it.
And so, how has this podcast of yours been received?
At first, it was really difficult because, like you say, the space is so saturated, and I think a lot of ex-Mormons, me included, want to be validated by finding out something new that the church has got wrong or a new anachronism. So the channels like Nemo the Mormon and different things where they do a lot of fact checking, that goes viral a lot quicker because people do feel validated. So at first it was a grind, to get views, to get people to read the blog. And probably for the first year, it was a real grind. But since then, as people have come to the channel, had a good laugh, a lot more people coming back, a lot more subscribers, so it's doing a lot better in its second year.
Yeah, I love your tagline. Reliving the past doesn't need to be painful; it can be funny too. And you really use a lot of TikTok, and I guess your background in radio obviously helps a lot as well. How's how's the TikTok going? And has your radio background also helped you your broadcasting abilities?
Yeah, absolutely. With regards to radio, just setting up and understanding the fact that most of the time, if you're doing a short video, if it goes past a minute, people don't want to watch. People get bored, so trying to keep things fresh, trying to keep things, just quick and compact. TikTok's just hard, man. TikTok is like, you get the most views on TikTok, but to get like followers on TikTok is just hard. So I don't have loads of followers, but my biggest video is like 1.4 million views.
Wow.
So it's one of them, you're like 1.4 million views. Well, that went viral, so I should have like 500,000 people click follow, and they don't. So is what it is.
Yeah, 1.4 million people. That's more than Lamanites that are left around. I mean, that's a tremendous amount of people.
Still looking for those Lamanites. What the heck happened to them?
So bad.
Now, is there anything else that you would like to tell us about your personal life or religious background before we get going?
No, I'm all good. There's no need for a temple recommended view here. I would fail it miserably.
Well, we forgot to do the pausing anyway, so it probably wouldn't work. But we did link to if you go to our show notes here, we did link to PD on Priesthood Dispatches on YouTube. He also has a website as well, and we've gone ahead and linked to those. You can also, if you come over to Anchor, you can leave us a voicemail for this podcast, and we're also on Twitter as well. If you'll drop us a like, drop a subscription, we'd be very grateful for that. We always start every episode here, PD, with the Mormon News Roundup joke of the week, which I understand that you're ready for.
Yeah, well, I got two of them just in case you heard the first one already.
Okay.
So okay, the first one, and it sounds similar to one you've heard before, but I'm hoping it's not. Okay, how many general authorities does it take to change a light bulb?
Oh boy, I don't know.
I don't think we've done this one before.
No, I don't think so.
Well,
I have no idea.
It's none because it's a gaslight.
Okay, that's good.
Perfect joke.
Right, yeah, exactly. All right, well, based on that one, I think a second one is definitely in order. Why don't you return and report with a second joke?
Okay, what is the difference between Mormons and ex-Mormons?
I don't know.
I don't know. On Reddit, it's a couple 100,000 people, but I don't know the actual answer.
It's the temperature of their caffeine.
That's very true.
Right.
Yeah.
That's good.
that brings up one of the latest conundrums I've been struggling with. So I understand being an active LDS person, you can drink decaffeinated coffee and still keep a temple recommend, correct? And you
Well, I
can,
mean,
I didn't think you
just
could.
well, just to be clear, the temple recommend says, "Do you live the word of wisdom?" It doesn't
yeah,
Well,
specifically ask about the word. The word coffee does not appear. It says,
true.
"Do you live the word of wisdom?" So it depends
Mhm.
on how you define the word of wisdom.
Okay, so I guess that's really a matter of like bishop roulette then, because if you tell some bishops, oh well, I drink decaf or Sanka, then they're like, oh, that's okay because it's not caffeinated. Other bishops would say, well, well, it's the spirit of the law, and who knows what other bishops would say.
you
But
know what? It comes down to brand name, okay?
that's
Because
right.
if
Hmm.
someone drinks decaf, I'd have said to them, "No, you can't go to the temple because you're drinking coffee." But if the can said weird hot chocolate on it, I'd
Hmm.
be like, "Yeah, you can go to the temple."
Yeah.
It doesn't say coffee on the can.
That's right. So I guess the conundrum that I have in my mind is if you're drinking, say, a weird hot chocolate, and you take Diet Coke and pour the Diet Coke into it, and then all of a sudden it becomes hot, right?
Hot
So,
caffeine.
yeah. So then, is that against the word of wisdom? And this is the one that I just have been. I'll never have an answer to it.
No, this is going to probably on the sealed portion of the Book of Mormon.
Yeah.
But but seriously, the temple recommend question. First of all, the 2019 update on it. It's question I believe number 11 that says, "Do you obey the word of wisdom?" The word coffee is never mentioned. When you go into DNC section 89, the word coffee is never mentioned. So I'm a very legalistic person. So if somebody says, do you obey the word of wisdom?" and I'm drinking coffee, and the word coffee does not appear in the word of wisdom, it's from a legal perspective, I can absolutely 100% answer that if I'm drinking coffee. That yes, I am living the word of wisdom because it doesn't appear in the scriptures. It's pretty simple.
All
Yeah.
right.
You know,
That answers that.
there's only one question on the temple recommend interview that matters, and that's the last question, because they could literally just read to you a list of rules and then say, "Do you feel worthy to enter the temple?" Because that's if you say no at the end of the interview, then you don't get a temple recommend. If you say yes at the end of the interview, and the bishop doesn't like have any interesting feelings through the spirit of discernment, then you get a temple recommend. You know that question is all they need to ask.
Yeah, interesting. And you would definitely know. That does bring us to our first news article because, to my knowledge, my co-host and I don't think he's ever been a bishop, and I certainly have never
No.
been a bishop.
Are, you,
Let's
are they crazy? They would never call me.
No, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
Now, okay, so let's hop into our first news articles for the week, and that's the first news article. These are all in our show notes, by the way. Is Perspective. This is a Deseret News editorial piece, which was published by Alan Dawkins on October 16, 2022. And it says, Perspective, the courts are coming for monogamy. We should resist. So, I mean, there's been some rumblings after in the United States here, PD. I know you probably don't get all this news over the pond considering the turbulence of your own country's government right now. Probably
Yeah.
a little concerned about what's going on over there. But we had a thing back in 2015 where the Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage. But the rumblings on the street are now that the U.S. Supreme Court is quite conservative, that they overturned the abortion ban, the so-called Roe versus Wade, and the second rumbling on the street is that they're going to be coming after same-sex marriage, and they also might be legalizing polyandry and also maybe polygamy. They're going to be the word on the street is because it's so far right that this could be the only time in a generation in which we would see a radical redefining of what a marriage is, striking out Oberfell and possibly bringing in polygamy and polyandry. There's already a couple of municipalities that have given the green light towards polyandry, and we're definitely moving in that direction. People, the sympathies for polygamous relationships and unusual relationships in the United States, the sympathy towards that, or the people who want to do that, it's growing. So the Deseret News, though, they're saying, hey, we should resist this. Do you think that do you see, Al, let me ask you, do you think that we would be seeing possibly polygamy or polyandry legalized in the United States, or the striking down of same-sex marriage?
If you read this article, it certainly seems like it's a big possibility. I could see it feasibly becoming a thing, But I'll tell you, it's going to take a lot of red tape to go through in order to get it to pass.
Well, that would be true if you did it through, if you made a law and you passed it through the House and the Senate. I think that it would take a lot of time. But the thing about the way that a lot of laws in the United States work is sometimes the Supreme Court just weighs in on something and boom, it's done. You don't need all of they say making the sausage, lawmaking. You don't want to watch the sausage made. Well, if the Supreme Court does it, that's it. It's over.
Yeah.
Just like what happened with same-sex marriage. What do you think, PD?
I don't think you'd have any problem getting it through the House. Like 50% of the guys in there got to be polyamorous anyway. Their wives just don't know it. Like they'd be like, "Oh, well, you can love who you love, yeah."
Yeah, that's true. Well, they said in the article that maybe 1 to 4% of the Americans are already in non-monogamous relationships anyways. We're talking about several million people here.
Yeah.
And of course, with the Deseret News, of course, people are pointing out the fact that it's a somewhat ironic that the Deseret News is coming out so strongly against redefining marriage when weren't Latter-day Saints the original ones who wanted to redefine it to begin with?
So I maybe this is one of their whole ways of saying, well, no, we have nothing to do with it, and so methinks they doth protest too much. Is that
yeah?
Is that the phrase?
You got to think this is a stepping stone to polygamy being legalized, and if polygamy was then legalized, the prophet has a big question on his docket sheet, and that is, do we go back to the new and everlasting covenant of plural marriage? Because we stopped it because it became illegal. Do we go back to it now that it's been made legal? All those prophets and apostles that went to prison or were on the run and different things because the Lord really needed them to do it, and now they have a whole department dedicated to stop it.
Yeah, and from the article we read, it says, ethics aside, most people don't have the skills and resources to make something like this work. I certainly don't. That's for sure.
I think you look in the divorce courts, there's a lot of guys in there who had the skills and resources to make it work for a while.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
You think about, we were doing in the rehearsal call that a lot of times with these polygamous relationships, Brigham Young, he had 57, 56 wives, and, he barely spent any time at all with any of his kids. It basically it turns it all into kind of like lesbian relationships because all the women are the ones who are doing all the work and raising all the kids, and the dad, he only comes in every once in a while.
Yeah, it's ridiculous, isn't it? The church has a problem with two moms raising a kid, but then inside their own jurisdiction, they'll have 10 moms raising 50 kids. And in heaven, it's going to be like the celestial kingdom is like lesbian heaven. It's just a same sex parent, like all these women, polygamous sister wives for 1 billion spirit children or whatever it might be. It's a double standard.
Yeah. I think one of the big roadblocks that this would have is the fact that marriage, as it stands legally, is a contractual agreement between two people and the state. And so the article said that Justice Roberts, I believe it was, he had a lot of pushback on this, saying, well, the way the law is written regarding marriage between two people, or it doesn't even have to be just two people. He said, there's nothing to stop this from becoming more than two people. And I think that you run into some real sticky issues there. For instance, let's say that the way the law is currently, if a husband and wife bear a child, then the wife becomes pregnant from a adulterous affair. Legally, the husband and wife, as long as they're still married and not divorced, that husband is financially responsible for raising that child. And so I think when you start adding more and more people to that contract, well, then, whose child is whose and who's financially responsible. I think it gets real sticky and complicated when you go beyond two people.
Yeah, but the church needs to be looking at this as a business opportunity to extend the whole ancestry DNA thing because they could be like, well, we can solve that. Let's just have a DNA test for every child, and then legally that child's assigned to its, DNA kind of parents, and just think how much money they could make doing that.
Certainly.
I don't know. Yeah, I do. From the article here, Alan Hawkins, who wrote the article, is a professor of family life at BYU, and he's arguing in the article that marital monogamy has great benefits and is the best method for raising children, and that we don't want to devalue monogamy because that's a price that we as a society don't want to pay. And you're just like, how is a BYU professor making this argument? Because we said back in 1850s, 1840s that polygamy was not only a better way of life, but it was the only way of life in which you could go to heaven, and it was far superior. Brigham Young argued in particular that it was far superior to marital monogamy. And read section 132. In fact, you can't get to heaven without it. So now we're seeing an argument that is 360 degrees, or actually, I guess that'd be 180. A 180-degree argument that says no, marital monogamy, that is the gold standard. Well, what's
Dives,
yeah?
Dives, you
Yes.
need take a breath. It's line upon line,
Oh,
precept upon precept. But this is what takes me back to your question. What's interesting about the followers of Joseph Smith Jr. And it is that's all they need. Line upon line, precept upon precept can explain anything. They could one day be like, Joseph Smith wasn't a prophet. He was just a vessel by which the Lord told a story. And eventually they'll be like, yeah, it's right. We've had it revealed by President Oakes or President Holland or whoever is the next, man up. But they will eat anything.
Well, I mean, if you base your life and your ethics on on things that can't be verified, faith by very definition, faith is something that does not have evidence for it. So if you're basing your life on on faith, on things without evidence, then you don't necessarily are able to argue points in his favor because it's not evidence based, it's faith based. So I mean, you can't really have a discussion about some of these type of things because it's just, hey, that's my faith, and that's the way that it is.
Yeah, and that's what it gets to in the end. I've had discussions over and over with family members and things, and you can, not that I want to bash with them or turn them in circles, but you bring out the logic and you just like, can't you see it? And they're like, well, it comes down to faith, doesn't it? Blind faith.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So really, what we need is a study to be done on this, right?
well, I think that a lot of studies have been done on it actually, and I think that the so-called, it used to be the evangelicals in particular used to trot out back in the 90s these, the studies that say, oh, well, the best relationship is one man and one woman, but there has been a lot of studies that have shown that, lesbian marriages in particular, they've been studied a lot more than two male gay members, that there is no negative effects on the child, and in some cases it may even have a positive effect on the child. So I think that there have been some studies. I don't know if we don't have enough time to get into it now, but let's keep on going here. I guess we could talk a long time about this, but we got to get through all the news. So our next article here is Mormon dad is blasted for saying gay daughter won't be tolerated at home. And this was from onlysky.media, and it was by Mr. Mehta. So Matthew Watkins, apparently an LDS member, bragged about his faith-based cruelty before locking down his Twitter account on Sunday night. So Mr. Watkins here, he tweeted out, he has a 4-year-old daughter here. And he tweeted out, if my daughter leaves the church, has an abortion, cohabitates, or marries a woman, etc., I will make several things 100% clear to her. Number one, I absolutely love her. Number two, I absolutely oppose her decisions. Number three, I will absolutely not tolerate it in my home. And number four, I absolutely love her. He's very absolute about his feelings, isn't he, PD?
Yep, said every guy in an abusive relationship to the person he just, beat up or did something bad to. He's like, I do it because I love you. He's setting this all out for her. I mean, she's 4, for goodness sakes. I mean, is he worried he's gonna like die soon and he needs to set this out young so when she's older, she's like, oh, my dad left me this to live by. She's 4. What in her behavior has led him to be like, man, is she a lesbian?
I don't know.
Yeah, she's 4 years old, dude. Props to him for using the love sandwich that he opened with love and closed it with love, and then in between just said some of the harshest things that a person could ever say to their kids. But hey, he loves her, so that makes it all okay, right? Just
Yeah,
so we can do anything is in the name of love, can't we?
Right, yeah, he said politely, if don't let's see here. You know where we stand on this. We can't give you our blessing. I don't know if we'll attend the ceremony. And if we do, don't let your officiator ask if anyone objects, because we will, politely, but we will. Don't ask us to let you and your lesbian lover stay in the spare bedroom, because as you know, we consider our home to be the temple. We have standards for guests and family members. You can come over maybe once in a while for a game night, but that's about it. I mean, he's got it all laid out here, guys. I mean, he's given this a lot of thought.
yeah, he's giving it too much thought.
Yeah.
He's tied himself in knots.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and this isn't something that he's off on the fringe. This is, like I said, he used the classic love sandwich, expressing love to begin with, and then the criticism, and then following it up with an expression of love at the end. So, I mean, he did it exactly the way that he was taught to do it. This is exactly how you're supposed to approach people, right?
Yeah, kindly rebuke or lovingly rebuke them, and then show an outpouring of love.
Yeah, I
Something
believe
like
that's
that.
even in the Doctrine and Covenants. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like hitting someone and then saying, "Oh, come here, give me a cuddle, I'll make it better."
Yeah, for real.
Well, it does remind me of President Oaks, who took a question very similar to this. He talked about somebody wrote in a question, and it was from the church's news, and he did a question, an article where he says, "Don't." His response was basically that don't ask us to take you out in public, don't ask to be a lengthy house guest. Matthew Watkins, he's not out in right field. He's basically really following the line of Dallin H. Oaks and his advice for if somebody comes out as gay. Don't expect us to pretend that that what you're doing is moral or is okay. And I mean, Matthew Watkins, he's laying down the gauntlet here really early, 4 years old.
Yeah, it reminds me of the LDS philanthropies adverts. Did you see them with the guy in the desert? And he was saying, "My sons know that if they don't grow up to be, worthy priesthood holders and the people they should be, that they won't get an inheritance."
Oh
Have you not
man,
seen that? I think they took it down.
no.
Ouch.
They tried to like burn it from the internet, but the internet never forgets.
Oh,
Boy,
for sure.
I gotta go check that one out.
Yeah, LDS philanthropies. It's
Mhm.
because the church just wants you to give them your money, essentially. They call it philanthropy because they're a registered charity, but you're just giving them money.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And this does take us to our Mormon News Roundup question of the week. Would you attend the wedding of your lesbian daughter / friend? So if you come on over to Anchor, you can interact and take our question of the week.
Hey everybody, it's D-Vase here. Thanks so much for listening to the Mormon News Roundup. If you haven't heard about Anchor by Spotify, it's the easiest way to make a podcast with everything you need all in one place. Allow me to explain. Anchor has the tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. When hosting on Anchor, you can distribute your podcast on listening platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and more. It's everything that you need to make a podcast all in one place. And best of all, Anchor is totally free. So download the Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started.
And that does take us to our featured news article, which is brought to us by PD. He found this week.
Yes, the church has reported on their very own website, so we're talking like from the horse's mouth, that on the 14th of October, the Kiev Ukraine temple reopened for limited ordinances. So we're assuming like living ordinances, the ones that they deem to be extremely essential, and they're that essential that you have to dodge Iranian kamikaze drone bombs and
Oh
Russian
no.
rockets and everything to get there because it's that essential.
Yeah, the central Kiev has been hit by those kamikaze drone strikes recently.
Yeah,
Mhm.
even since it's reopened, like, what are they doing? Why?
Oh,
Like that's what a one-way trip to the celestial kingdom, isn't it? Go and get married in the temple, and then on the way home, you're just like, take me now. You
Well,
Yeah.
I
know?
can't think of a better way to go than to get nailed while you're in a temple. That's gotta be that's gotta be right. That's practically second anointing material right there.
For
Getting
sure.
nailed in the temple, doesn't that take us back to Kirtland with all the polygamous
Mhm.
wives getting nailed in the temple?
Yep.
Oh man, I
Sorry,
mean this is
sorry.
just it's just
Oh,
this is just a couple days after the serious bombing nearby. I mean, people are dying in the streets of Ukraine and in Kiev. Just waves. I'm reading the AP story just a couple days before it reopened. Waves of explosive-laden suicide drones strike Kiev amidst intensified fighting. I'm
Yeah,
just wondering, is this the best time to open up the temple?
I genuinely think it is like President Nelson canceling the Priesthood Relief Society session of conference. He thought it was a great idea, and then like a week later, the powers that be and the sensible people kind of said to him, "Oh no," and he did a great U-turn. And I think this is going to happen here as the fighting intensifies. They're going to be like, "No, that was a bad idea. We squeezed a few ordinances in, but we need to close it again."
I just keep getting this image in my mind of people walking with their little suitcases or their temple bags into the Kiev temple while you've got Russian commandos stealthily stalking around the corners and marching up the streets, getting into a gunfight. And it's like, oh, don't shoot us. We're on our way to the temple.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just don't. I don't want anybody to give their lives on the way to a to die, literally die on the way to a temple. I am a veteran of the armed forces. I have
Mm-hmm.
been in harm's way a couple of times, and nothing too serious. But um, you know, when there's this kind of intensive fighting, do you really want somebody to die on the way to the temple to do, an ordinance for them? Because that's a real
No.
possibility. That doesn't seem very smart.
Yeah, I think the thing you've got to bear in mind here is the generation we're talking about. So there are parents, grandparents, maybe we're a bit old for grandparents now, but our parents, and they've been promised for the last 60 years that Jesus will come in their lifetime. Okay, so when I talk to my parents, all of this kind of Ukraine stuff, Russia getting going with the nukes again and things like that, they get a bit excited about it because they're like, well, this is it. This is the lead up to Armageddon. And what could be better than sitting in the temple in the place you're supposed to be and a nuke dropping on you because you won't know anything about it and you'll be instantly already in your robes in the celestial kingdom. You've just had a fresh reminder of the passwords. Boom. Literally, boom.
I can't think of a better way to go. Honestly, that would be in my that's in my top 5 just thinking about that. But that's just for me. I don't want to wish that on anybody else. And let's also just remember that, with LDS theology, let's say that yes, getting your life endowment, that is very important for LDS theology. I get that. But if somebody dies, you can just do their work for them anyway. It's really not
Mm-hmm.
that big of a deal. This isn't like, some of the Catholic theology that says, if you don't get baptized, then, you're in big trouble, or some of these other religions that say, hey, baptism, you're out of luck and that's it. You got one shot. We're not talking about Alvin Smith here. So if somebody
Mm-hmm.
doesn't get their endowment and then they pass away in the fighting, I mean, you can take care of it pretty simply. It's really not that
Yeah.
hard. So
Oh, and it will be taken care of, even if it's against your will. I mean, there's no regard for what the person's personal preference was for their religious beliefs while they were alive. We're just throwing out a blanket, endowment to cover everybody. And they can choose to accept it. They can choose to reject it, but it will be done for them regardless.
You know what?
yes, and
I was just
Mm-hmm.
gonna say, I used to be jealous of non-members who like would eat, drink, and be merry for tomorrow they die. That whole attitude, and who
Mm-hmm.
experienced this life, because I'd be like, you don't know how lucky you are, because in the next life you can just have your work done for you, and you enjoyed this life, and then you still get everything I get. You know,
That's
it's
right.
like it's the whole prodigal son thing, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
why did I have to be born an actual member?
Mm-hmm.
Because someone was going to do it for me in the millennium anyway.
Yeah.
So I might as well endure 1,000 years in spirit prison and then eternity in the celestial kingdom as a god.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
but if you were to go and engage in eat, drink, and being merry along with them, well, you're held to a higher standard. So, I that would lead to your condemnation,
We
regardless of
actually
what you do.
we actually had Greg from Quick Media on the program a couple of months ago, and we asked him about that, and he said that PD, if that was the case, can you imagine how much further along towards godhood you would be than those individuals, because they still got a lot to learn. So you're going to be miles ahead, PD.
No, I'd be about 70 years ahead, which in the terms of eternity is naff.
Yeah.
Okay, that does take us seriously though, that does take us to our Mormon News Roundup poll of the week, which is available over on Anchor here. So, and you come on over to Anchor, and you can interact with us on this poll. Take our poll, and here is the question, which goes along with our featured news article, which was brought to us by PD. How do you feel about the LDS Church reopening the Kiev Temple during the ongoing Russian war? PD, is it number one?
Blessed. The Lord is really protecting the Kiev Temple. No, I don't think that. It's not. If anyone remembers Starship Troopers, one of the opening scenes shows Salt Lake, and over the Salt Lake Temple, there's like a dome to protect them from aliens. And I don't think that's a thing. I know that a lot of flat earthers out there think there's an invisible dome. Maybe they borrowed one from them, but I don't see a dome. So no, I'm not with number one. I do not think they're protecting it.
Well, the Lord, he is definitely protecting the temple, but the Ukrainian people not so much. That's
No.
unfortunate. No, it's I guess it's kind of amazing what God's priorities are. Or is it number two?
Number two, conflicted, literally. And yes, this is me. I am conflicted about the whole thing because I can understand that some members will be rejoicing in the Ukrainian area. They'll be like where they can go get respite for a couple of hours and forget about the world outside. They put extra soundproofing on the wall maybe so that you don't hear what's going on, all the gunfire and stuff. But I'm just like, why put yourself in that situation?
Yeah, definitely. Or is it number three?
No issues. I already made an appointment to the temple. Work for all the dead journalists Putin killed.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh.
No.
Let's. I hope not. I hope not. PD.
That's being on the ball over there. Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah.
mean, they do. You do need to get it done, and I can't think of nobody who needs to get their work done faster than those Putin, those journalists there. So, yeah, hopefully not number three. Or is it number four?
The church evacuated the missionaries from Ukraine, but no one can evacuate the spirit from my heart.
Not even suicide drone bombers.
You know what? It's going to be the whole Abinadi thing. There will be a big bomb that goes off around the temple, and everything will be laid waste to, apart from the temple. And a few members who were stood outside gossiping about some sister on Sunday, they will all just be stood there in their garments because obviously all their normal clothes will have been burnt away. And they'll be like, "Nope, the spirit got me."
Kind of like the Willard. That's the kind of the Willard Richards, the Willard Richards approach there. He was the only one running. Yeah, gotcha. Or is it number five?
Nothing can stop the temple work except for in Kirtland, Nauvoo, Samoa, Orem, Jerusalem, Temple Lot, or Far West.
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's right. No unhallowed hand can stop temple work, except for the fact that we don't own the Kirtland Temple anymore. Nauvoo was burned to the ground. Samoa was completely wrecked by a hurricane or a fire. Orem Temple was also arson. Jerusalem Temple was razed to the ground a couple of times. Temple Lot, we still don't have a temple there. Far West, Independence, Missouri. Yes, nothing can stop temple work except for all of these exceptions.
Yeah.
So which one do you feel best represents you there, PD?
Number two, conflict.
Number two, conflict.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that makes a lot of sense there. I mean, we literally are in the middle of a conflict, so to feel conflicted about it, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we'd like to thank our official sponsor here, which is Signature Books, and head on over to signaturebooks.com, and you can purchase some of their books. We can't recommend them highly enough. And we also drop all of these podcasts onto YouTube. You can find us there. Drop us a like, drop us a subscription, drop us a comment. We would greatly appreciate that. That does take us to our next news article, which BYU. I don't know how much you guys follow the BYU football, but I tend to follow it just a little bit. Unfortunately they lost to Liberty University yesterday, and the football season is not going that well. When it comes to Mormon news, though, I have a subscription to Google Alerts for Mormon and LDS, and you would be surprised what percentage of news that is Mormon related news is just about BYU football, because believe me, nobody out there that the so-called Gentiles, persons of other faith, they don't really care what Russell M. Nelson has to say. But a lot of people are very interested in college football. That's a big deal.
Oh yeah,
So
college football's a big deal across the country.
you betcha. So
Yeah.
I got this from the last game here. So BYU's lost 2 in a row, and from the loss that happened last week here, I have Cody Epps, a BYU football player, who was he had a post game interview after a loss. And Al, can you read us what did the reporter ask him, and what was Cody's response about the loss of the BYU football game last week?
Okay, let's see. So we've got the reporter. What did you see from the guys in the locker room after a game like this? Because obviously very disappointed with the performance in a lot of regards. What do you see from the guys moving forward? And then Cody responds, I see a bunch of dudes that are all still Christ-like and are still ready to go to class on Monday, still ready to go to church tomorrow, still ready to be great human beings on and off the field,
Amen.
and still dudes ready to play some football next Saturday. Dudes ready to get to practice Monday, Tuesday, and keep grinding. That's what I see completely. I don't see anybody feathering off and focusing on other stuff or picking apart at each other. We're still ready to go. We're a group of guys that love the game, and we want to approach life like Christ. So that's my viewpoint.
Yeah, that loss there, PD, it didn't seem to bother him too much, did it?
No, do you think if they'd have said that about the Stripling Warriors, it'd have made it into the Book of Mormon? Do you think that defeatist attitude and speech would have come from the mouth of Joseph in the form of a Book of Mormon scripture? You know, this guy, at a guarantee, like 90% of BYU fans just scoffed at the television and were like, no, we love BYU so much, we got to win. That's not worth it. With his attitude, he might as well tell him, go put on your Sunday best. Next game, we're going to sit on the goal line with our scriptures. And as long as we're ready to go for like Institute, we won. We're the winners, really. You know, just let them throw it over you.
That's right. That's exactly why when I read Cody's response, I had to put on my general conference cadence.
Yeah. So, this is American football, PD, and I know that you follow the real football in the Premier League. What if a player after Premier League, I can't remember which club I think your Liverpool's your club, I can't remember. What if a player on the Premier League had this kind of attitude that says, hey, we lost, but that's okay because we're going to heaven?
You know what? A couple of them have said, like, all praise be to God at times, and I think there's a collective eye roll from the whole nation. I'm a Nottingham Forest fan. We beat Liverpool yesterday, which
sorry.
was a big deal. No, it's fine. It's fine. It's easy to confuse two massive teams. But yeah, like if a manager came out and said that, he'd be fired so fast. Like the owner would just eat the £3 million contract and be like, you know what, I'll pay you, just go away. If that's your attitude, you just lost the dressing room because all the players are just going to laugh at you when you walk in. None of them are going to go with what you say anymore, because if they're like, well, it doesn't matter if we win anymore, as long as, we have our Bible under our seat or whatever. Yeah, it wouldn't go down well.
I mean, he's got, it's okay to have an eternal perspective. I get that, but, at some point in time, I don't think that Jesus is going to be I don't think you're going to be able to throw the touchdown to Jesus in the end zone. You know what I mean? He's not there.
He's not going to help.
I don't see how that's going to help.
I wouldn't throw it at him anyway. He's got holes in his hands.
Oh, no. Oh, boy.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no. Oh, boy. Okay,
This is going to be our best show yet.
Yeah,
you can take that out if you want.
I love it. There's no way I'm taking that out.
Yeah, you're making a lot of friends, PD. You're making a lot of friends out there, I can tell. Okay.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, speaking of BYU, though, that we have another article here related on BYU, or as Al calls it, the only true and living university on the face of the earth with whom the Lord is well pleased.
That's right.
And right. So BYU, this came out on KSL here a couple of days ago, posted by Logan Stefanich on October 18, 2022, and it says who's growing and who's shrinking enrollment numbers released for Utah institutions. So, Utah's got like, I don't know, 10 schools of higher education. They have Utah Technical University. They've got Utah State University. They have Utah Valley University. And guess what? In every single one of these universities, Weber State, enrollment, it's up 1%. Utah Valley, it's up 4%. Utah Technical, it's up 2%. Utah State University, up 13%. University of Utah, all-time high with undergraduate, the 34,000 undergraduates. SUU is up 6%. Every single university, including Snow College and Salt Lake Community College, basically every university in the state of Utah, enrollment is through the roof because, we're through COVID. A lot of people took COVID year off. If you're doing a major or something at school that's not very conducive to, I don't know, online work. If you're a welder, that just ain't going to work to go to school online if you're a welder, for instance. So, there's a big boom of enrollment. Enrollment's up across the nation, except for one school in Utah, and that's Brigham Young University. Enrollment is down. How can this possibly be explained, Al?
That's a good question. I think that BYU. I think that here's one thing that we've talked in our previous article is that when it comes to the LDS Church making the news or Mormonism making the news, a lot of times it's BYU football, right? The other times when BYU is making the news, and it seems like most church news is focused around BYU, but it's not really positive stuff. You got BYU university or a university that's anti-LGBTQ plus people, very much trying to retrench itself into a very old and archaic way of being. It's come out that you have like the Title IX office that's in cahoots with the BYU Police Department and the Honor Code office, and they're all kind of together, and it just you don't get a lot of positive news. It's really what would you say? At best, it raises an eyebrow. At worst, you're like, this is completely corrupt and inappropriate. So I could see people not wanting to go there, just because there's so much more expected of you, and it's not even that. It's a lot that's expected. It's kind of stupid things are expected of you. Like you have to wear shorts that go down to your knees, or you're not allowed to have facial hair, or just mundane things that are ridiculous.
You can't wear sandals on campus.
Yeah, things like that. And so if you're thinking about going to college, well, do you want to go to some place where you have to go to school in a suit and tie every day, or would you rather go to a party school? And maybe you're not a drinker, but that's okay. At least you're going to go to the party and have a fun time. So,
yeah, what do you think, PD? You read this article. Why is it that BYU is standing alone in the state of Utah as far as enrollment being down? That's a bit of a concern.
Just to comment on what Al just said about the dress code. Like I can only imagine that when you start at BYU, you're given a book of rules, and that on the front of that book of rules, at some point, it's obviously got the BYU logo and different things, but at some point there'll be the church logo, and it's kind of like saying, "Here's what Jesus dresses like. You can't dress anything like that."
That's right.
He's got sandals on. He's got his shoulders out. He's got a beard and long hair. Yeah. He's even showing a little bit of nip. No, don't even think about it. But I think so. I'm not over there, but from what I hear, enrollment's way down at BYU Idaho, and that is the first place, because BYU Idaho is less desirable than BYU Provo. But if you can't get into Provo, you go to Idaho, and if less people are applying at Idaho, then it shows that it's not more because it's down in Provo as well. So it's not more people being led into Provo. It's just less people going to both, and it's unreal that that's even happening. Because doesn't the church give like some help with your fees or something for members?
2/3 of the cost of your enrollment at the BYU schools are shouldered by the church.
Holy hell! Like I'd have snapped that hand off straight away. I'd have been like, yes, I'm going there, because the education doesn't sound bad from what people have come out with. But I think the whole musket fire speech from Holland earlier in the year or in the last year has really polarized the LGBTQ issue, because I think from what I saw, a lot of parents were worried about their kids going to BYU, and they were like, "Oh, I'm not sure. It's becoming a lot more progressive. The LGBTQ this and that." And then Holland came down and really like laid it down, put the hammer down, and said, "No, we won't do that. We're, firing our muskets in the right direction." And I think that turned the kids off. So it turned the parents on, but it turned the kids off to go in there, because they've grown up in a different world, in an accepting world where you love who you love, and there's not much you can do about that. So, and if the kids don't want to go, they're always going to win because it's their life.
Yeah, I mean, there's also there's also a concern. Students are pretty smart, and there's been a lot of rumblings about accreditation in various different
Hmm.
departments at BYU, including the entire school's possible accreditation. It did pass accreditation, but there was some question. And think about going to a school in which an accreditation of a department or even the entire school could be called into question. That would render your degree practically meaningless, and people don't want to gamble with the thousands of dollars and the years of their life to go to a place in which maybe you make it through accreditation through the program, but what if that program later is stripped of accreditation? Your degree is worth so much less from an institution like that, and BYU is going to continue to run into those type of issues unless it modifies its LGBTQ stance. And as you mentioned, PD, with Elder Holland's talk, that does not appear that it is going to happen anytime soon, and students are very aware of these issues.
Yeah, and he was ready just to throw that out. He was in that talk. He was like, "Well, if it means we lose accreditation, we lose accreditation." There's
Yeah, and this is the previous president of the university saying that he just doesn't care about accreditation. Wow.
Yeah. I think about my own kids. I've got a daughter who's now she's in her freshman year of college. My son, he's about to be going to college potentially next year. And, neither one of them applied to BYU. I asked my daughter, she applied to 5 schools. I said, are you sure you don't want to apply to BYU? She says, no, I don't want to go to BYU. And my son also said the same thing. I'm just not interested in going to BYU. If you're losing my children in particular from that, and if I look around my own ward house as well, the amount of people going to BYU seems to be declining. I don't know. This is all anecdotal. If you're losing my type of kids and the kids in my neighborhoods who are coming from the East Coast who want to come over to BYU, there's something that's a real problem here.
Yeah, not to get too personal, Dives, but did either of your kids give a reason why they
Well,
weren't going?
my daughter said that she was too progressive, and she's extremely conservative to begin with. But
Mhm.
LGBTQ issues and those are she wants to be she's a gay ally. She's has gone to a couple of protests, and
Mhm.
that's not going to cut it on BYU campus. She knows that she wouldn't fit in there, and my son also the same way. He it's the being the number two anti-LGBT school. School on those reports. Being number two, I think only Liberty University is worse. That has a real impact on students. They don't want to be seen going to a school that could potentially bigoted. Think about going to a school, I don't know, 20 years ago that was still segregated and saying, no, we're, like the Bob Jones University. Oh, no, we're not going to segregate, no interracial marriage. You think about that just 20 years ago. Students would not be tolerating that. There'd be a huge stigma of graduating from a school that is still so behind the modern day sensibilities.
Yeah, and I think they rubber stamped that when the freshmen came back this year in those packets, the welcome packets. I'm sure you probably covered it, where they put in a local LGBTQ charity put together like a pamphlet, a help guide to where you can
Mhm.
find support, to where the LGBTQ kids hang out, to
Yeah.
all those things, so they feel welcome and included. But yeah, they took him out and they destroyed him. So they clearly have an issue with it.
This podcast is brought to you by our friends over at Signature Books, www.signaturebooks.com. We invite you to check out their latest book written by Romney Burke, which is entitled Susie Young Gates, Daughter of Mormonism.
Brigham Young had over 50 wives and 56 children, but none has better name recognition than daughter Susa Young Gates. She lived from 1856 and died in 1933. Yet she, like so many women of Mormonism's past, has remained a mystery to most church members. In Susa Young Gates, Romney Burke, the author, paints a portrait of a strong woman who rose to prominence within the church, fought for the rights of women throughout the country, yet dealt with personal trials and her share of heartbreak.
Definitely. Now, our next article here, we try to keep these podcasts not too long, is Dustin Lance Black. He's in the spotlight. He's never seems like he's out of the spotlight, by the way, but he was the showrunner for Big Love and also recently for he was the brains behind Under the Banner of Heaven. And, he's a former member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. He calls himself an ex-Mormon now. And he just, a new documentary just came out about his life, and it's called Mama's Boy, and it premiered on HBO on October 18th. The film explores Black's childhood, gay identity, and relationship with his mother. Now, unfortunately, I have not had a chance to watch this particular documentary. It's on my to-do list, but I keep saying, why do we keep covering Dustin Lance Black? And that I think that this is my opinion here. I think that Dustin Lance Black may be the most powerful ex-Mormon in the world, who considers himself an ex-Mormon, because I mean he definitely has an axe to grind against the church, and I think that we're going to see him more and more going forward. Did you guys check out this article? What do you think about Dustin Lance Black?
I haven't had a chance to watch the documentary yet, but I am looking forward to it. He's a very compelling character in LDS history, and I say that because today, modern day, is part of it's going to be a part of LDS history 10 years from now. So I think that you're very accurate by saying he's the most powerful ex-Mormon in the world. A good assessment. I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Yeah, well, we're all about 6 months behind you guys here in the UK. Like Under the Banner of Heaven only came out late July, but it was amazing. I watched it like 3 times because I don't know how non-Mormons kind of will have got on with that, because there was so much subtleties that he put in there that mean a lot to Mormons, because we know what the significance of the dead seagull is, or we know what the significance of him not wearing his garments is, and different things. But to non-Mormons, I don't know if you'd be a bit lost. But my sister called me and she said, I just watched Under the Banner of Heaven. Now she's a TBM, her husband's a bishop, and I said, what did you think? And she's like, oh, well, I knew a lot of the issues anyway. And I said, well, did you watch it with your husband? She said, no, and I'm not going to let him watch it. Why not? Because I don't think he could deal with the issues. He's the bishop, okay, of his ward, and she doesn't think he could take it. That's how powerful Dusty Lance Black is when he puts it just in like plain, it's obviously theatrical, dramatized for the show, but the truth bombs that he kind of dropped there with the things that we just don't talk about anymore, like the one mighty and strong was a real thing. People were looking for the one mighty and strong. So I think he did really well, and he will do well in the future.
Yeah, for me, he's either the most powerful ex-Mormon in the world, or Jacinda Ardern might be. She's the Prime Minister of New Zealand, but she's not really a crusader. She's probably from a, legislative or an executive perspective, being the Prime Minister of New Zealand, of an entire country. That in some ways is more powerful, but she doesn't really have an axe to grind. She doesn't really talk about Mormon issues. So for someone who is actually interested in the faith still, because it doesn't appear that Jacinda Ardern, from what I've seen, that she's really as much interested in Mormonism. I think that it's Dustin Lance Black. He had the head injury, which we covered a couple of weeks ago. Hopefully he's recovered from that. And I know, Al, I ask you, is Dustin Lance Black, is he just trying to bring this whole thing down? Is that his goal? I mean, because he is relentless.
Yeah, he is relentless. I think that his motivation is to to instigate change for the better. If that change is resisted, as I'm sure it will be, then yeah, he would rather see the whole thing torn down than to see more pain and suffering at the hands of the church. I think first and foremost, he would love to see the church change, to be more accommodating, to be less abusive to people that don't fit the mold.
Definitely, his thrust is that the church in particular is misogynistic, which is the case with his mother and his father's relationship. Even though he is gay, he's actually, yes, obviously he has many issues about the church's stance with LGBTQ, but his primary criticism for the church is the misogyny and lack of women, having access to power, and the church helping women who are in vulnerable situations who are being abused by their husbands, which is the case for his own mother. That's why the documentary is called Mama's Boy, and I do have it on my to-do list as far as covering it. Unfortunately, we don't have more time on that article, but I am planning on watching that. Can you take us to the next article there, Al?
Yeah, so to tie this into our previous one, Under the Banner of Heaven, the book that the detective is reading in his car is that big red book, Mormonism, is it Truth or Shadow?
Shadow or Reality?
Shadow or Reality, that's the one. Okay. That was published by Gerald and Sandra Tanner of Utah Lighthouse Ministry. Sandra Tanner just released an announcement this past week that over Facebook that she's 82 years old. She's tired. She's in good health, thankfully, but she's ready to retire. I mean, she's done an amazing amount of work in getting the truth of LDS history out there. Gerald, her late husband, and her back in the 60s, I believe it was, started going through LDS archives and the LDS library before they started to close those things off. And they were able to get a lot of the documentation preserved and out there for the public to have access to. So, this is something where we really want to extend a big vote of thanks to them for their contributions and wish her the best going forward as they close their bookstore.
Yeah, are you familiar with the Lighthouse Ministry there, PD? How do you feel about that finally being closed after all this time?
You know what? I really wish that I could have visited and met Sandra because they, like, some people are like, oh, the Tanners are not the heroes you think they are and stuff. And I'm just like, look, regardless of who they are personally, the work that they've done over the last 40 years or so, the effort they've put in publishing pro-truth literature about the church, in, as you said, going into the library and bringing out the documents so that we can all see it, is just, yeah, it's out of this world. And I can't thank them enough for what they've provided for us.
Yeah, thank you very much. So you can see if you want to go over to Facebook, you can drop a comment. We link to the Utah Lighthouse Ministry closing on Facebook. If you want to give your comments on that, then feel free to head on over there. And you can also come over to our Patreon page if you want to give us a donation. If you like the Mormon News Roundup and want to, we have a couple of tiers of subscription. If you want to contribute to this podcast, we'd be very grateful. Now, we have two final articles here to get through for this week. And that's this week we saw President Nelson sighting in the wild. And these are actually pretty rare here. This was on KSL by Logan Stefanich, posted on October 19, 2022. And University of Utah breaks ground on $185 million medical school building. And there's a picture that President Nelson here. He was part of the headliners here. He greets Spencer Fox Eccles, who is the donator or the bankroller really for that Eccles Medical School there, and also the president of the University of Utah, Taylor Randall. And there was a groundbreaking of the new medical education building on campus at the U. And if you scroll down, you'll see pictures of President Nelson with the shovel. And, we don't get to see a lot of pictures of President Nelson out in the wild. He is definitely not very well traveled. But we did get to see a picture of him out there taking care of business there. How do you feel about President Nelson there being involved with this groundbreaking, Al?
Well, I think a lot of the reason we don't see him in public all that often is he's 98 years old. The guy's ancient. He's older than the Queen of England, who recently passed. So, this is something that, it's surprising. But what's most surprising is when he does make these appearances, he just kind of pops in. Like he popped in at the Heber City Temple dedication as well, didn't he? Where it's not really pre-announced. And I'm not sure, maybe they're just like, oh, are you feeling up to it today? Or maybe this is, he's such an important person. We got to make sure that he's protected and, keep it a secret what his schedule is so that his enemies can't, I don't know, that's a little out there. But yeah.
I mean,
Hey,
maybe there could be security concerns. Who knows? I don't know.
no, you gotta. So a couple of weeks ago, maybe a week ago, he was supposed to appear in Calgary in Canada, and he didn't get there in the end due to plane trouble.
I
I'm just
see.
like, next conference talk, plane trouble in
Mm,
Canada.
Oh
Again.
no! Oh
Not again.
no! Not again! No. Well, that just shows to me that Satan is really trying to bring down the prophet, PD. If that is
Yeah,
the case,
but
that strengthens my testimony.
oh no. Well, I don't know why there aren't more memes out there with these guys like digging their own graves. If you get enough old guys together with shovels, it wouldn't take much on Photoshop to put some holes in there. Like how is that not out there? Is it too insensitive?
Yeah,
I
too
don't
early, too
know.
early. Too soon, too soon. But I do wonder, though, if someone at the U will just give the prophet a refresher about how genetics works. Dogs have always been dogs, monkeys have always been monkeys. That's just the way genetics works. Since he's dedicating the groundbreaking, this is a University of Utah Medical Education Center. Education. Can someone just give him a 5-minute refresher about how genetics works? I think, if you're going to have somebody groundbreak your medical education center who does not understand genetics, maybe just a little refresher. I'm just saying.
No, as you say, I've heard from the security team, and it takes a long time for him to get to events because whenever he goes anywhere, they do have to stop the car on every corner he sees a dog whilst he gets out and just lets the dog know, you've always been a dog.
That's good. don't want false beliefs going through that dog's mind, right?
Technically, PD, that is correct. That dog has always been a dog. That's
yeah. Imagine how he'd never get anywhere if there were monkeys in Utah.
Oh no.
Absolutely. Okay, now that does take us to our final news article here, which is Mormon. So the Bad Mormon book here. Did you follow the Housewives, the Real Housewives saga, PD? I know you're into a lot of soaps, and you're probably a royal watcher. I'm not sure, but do you get into the Housewives? Have you heard of that?
You know what? I've seen the trailers for the Real Housewives of Salt Lake, but I've not activated the the subscription I need to watch it yet because I only get 7 free days on the subscription, and I'm like, right, I need to binge it in those 7 free days because I'm cheap. So I need to watch it. But yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because the one of the there's the Real Housewives of different cities, mostly I guess mostly American cities. Not too sure about that. I haven't caught it much myself here, but one of them was the Real Housewives of Salt Lake, and probably the most famous person on there was Heather Gay, and she's a former BYU graduate. I think she was a lawyer once upon a time, but she wrote a book that's called Bad Mormon. Ooh, Bad Mormon. That's quite a name of a book there. And, just released this last week, she has been sued by the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, the Intellectual Reserve Inc., Corporation Sole, being represented in this case by Mr. Grow and a couple of lawyers based out of Washington, D.C., that her book title, Bad Mormon, she's being sued by the church because, guess what here, folks? The church owns the trademark to Mormon.org, the Book of Mormon, the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, Mormon Messages, Mormon Channel, and a bunch of other Mormon-related trademarks, which has been trademarked by the United States Patent and Trademark Office. You can go on to that. We'll put a link into the show notes. But no, you can't write a book about being a bad Mormon because the church owns the term Mormon.
So this really is a case of the church saying you can't use that word. That's our word.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
They need to save it because it's not gone. It's coming back.
Whoa. Is that a prophecy?
Yeah. I don't know whether it'll be Uchtdorf or whoever, because the whole Mormon thing is just a Russell Nelson's love affair with putting Gordon B. Hinckley down. Like, he's done it with the temples. I've announced more temples than Gordon B. Hinckley ever did. He's not built them. But a little while ago in conference, he stood up when he was an apostle and he gave the talk about calling ourselves the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and how Mormon was bad and different things. And then the next conference, President Hinckley stood up and he totally put him in his place and said, we should treat the word Mormon as meaning more good. And I think we're going to go back to that because you can't just get rid of the word Mormon. It's on your book, which is like the keystone of your religion. So what are you going to do with it? It'll be back.
Okay, it's a rare PD prophecy here, and we will be we'll have to have you back on the program to see if that does come to pass. But you put this out on your Facebook page, I think, didn't you, PD, about something regarding this in the Mormon Church? What was there a reaction to that, as I recall?
Yeah. So a lot of people, it was on YouTube. I had a guy recently coming on and saying, "Oh, the church, it's a classic now. You get kids saying it too, and you're just like, dude, you're not even old enough to know what you're talking about." But whenever you mention the word Mormon, they'll say, "Well, actually, I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints." And you're like,
Yeah, it's
dude,
obnoxious.
don't even start with me. But someone came on my YouTube and they left a comment saying, you need to know the topic before you talk about it. We're members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, because the video was called Mormon Data Breach, because a couple of weeks ago, like, Russia stole all of our data. Well, 7 months ago, they stole it all, and they told us about it a couple of weeks ago. But they, so I just said to him, look, the full name of the church doesn't fit well on a thumbnail, and the last 150 years of prophets were okay with it, so I'm okay with it too.
Yeah. Well, you think about it. If Mormon is a victory for Satan, then wouldn't Bad Mormon, wouldn't that be a victory for God? Because it's Bad Mormon, double negative, right?
Yes.
So
it
that
becomes
should
a
be
positive.
right. It becomes a positive. So
Yeah.
it's kind of like you can't use the term you can't use the term Mormon, and neither can we. The church is trying to eliminate the word Mormon off of the face of the earth. I mean, they're going after the word Mormon just like they went after the Lamanites. They're just trying to wipe them out.
Yeah, they'll never be able to do it until they change the name of the book to, like, the Book of Moroni's Dad.
That has a nice ring to it, PD.
The Book of the Victory for Satan. They won't be able to do it.
I'm not too sure about that one. That doesn't roll off the tongue.
I still like it though.
But how are they going to get rid of, like, the actual book in the Book of Mormon called Mormon, where he, like, abridges stuff? How are they going to get rid of that?
Well, okay, so first of all, actually, I have heard from rumblings on the streets that they're going to change the name of the Book of Mormon potentially to New American Testament of Jesus Christ. I actually like the sound of that. I like that. That has a nice ring to it. Seriously.
Sure.
But as far as the headings, PD, of the Book of Mormon, those headings weren't in Reformed Egyptian. I know that you put a lot of stock in the Reformed Egyptian, but they are not in the actual manuscript itself. Those were put in later. So actually, if you think about it, the Mormon, it was his abridgment at the beginning of the Book of Mormon that was lost. The first, the so-called 116 pages, and that's not Mormon's abridgment. So it used to be the Book of Mormon because he was so heavily involved. But a lot of the Book of Mormon, that's not from Mormon's abridgment anymore. That's from Nephi's abridgment. So technically speaking, to call it the Book of Mormon is a little bit anachronistic because so much of Mormon's abridgment is gone. So getting rid of the word Mormon out of the book, getting rid of the word Mormon out of the Book of Mormon, I don't think is that big of a deal. And you can change the chapter headings, just like the chapter headings have been changed many times before because they're not in the original manuscript. Those are latter-day, editorials. So I don't think that would be an issue to get rid of all of that.
You know what? They've already got precedent for it as well, because Joseph got fed up of spelling Mahonri Mariankama, so he just called him the brother of Jared. And if the church really wants to get rid of Mormon, they can just have it mentioned once, just call him Mormon once, and then just call him Father of Moroni.
That's right.
Very nice, very nice. Well, PD, thank you so much for coming on to the program. We really appreciate you here. And we have, by the way, a commitment here that RFM himself, the Mormon podcasting legend, he has given us a commitment to come onto the program on November 6th. And we have a soft commitment from Mormonism with Murph. I don't know if you're familiar with his channel, but Mormonism with Murph, he's said that he's going to be coming on the near future as well. So, PD, thank you so much for being here and ruminating with us on the Great and Spacious Beehive.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
All right. Thank you both very much. And we want to give a big shout out to Weird Alma for this episode's music. Thanks so much for ruminating with us on the Great and Spacious Beehive. And remember, no unhallowed hand can stop the work can stop this podcast from progressing.
When it comes to nicknames of the church, such as LDS Church, the Mormon Church, to remove the Lord's name from the Lord's church is a major victory for Satan.
Satan.
Please allow me to introduce myself. I'm a being with no moral constraints. My number one goal is to hurt the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.